Hello and welcome to Thoughts from the Green Room, the interview series with your host, Geoff Mays. This week in studio we have Matt Campagna, writer, producer, director, filmmaker, and founder of Highball TV. We're going to talk about what it takes to make it in the industry and how to survive. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much, Geoff.
Appreciate you coming into the Green Room studio, as is.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good. So for those of you out there who don't know Matt Campagna, my friend and sometimes inspiration, colleague at arms in the film industry.
Absolutely.
I want to give you a little bit of background on this wonderful and talented man. You've been making movies since you were 10 years old.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, George Lucas tended to shoot them. I would just re-edit them on VCRs that I put together from garbage. Yeah. So I was an editor, really. And, that's the final step of writing a movie. So that's filmmaking.
Yeah, filmmaking. And that's where you started. Right?
Absolutely.
When you were 10 years old. Two VCRs and a copy of Star Wars, which you made your own copy of.
Yes, absolutely. The copyright protection wasn't so good on those old, top-load VCRs. Mm-hmm. So I would get ones that were older than me, basically, and wire those into newer VCRs, and then I'd be able to make my own Star Wars.
Look at that. So that's where you started. And you've gone through from there. You're a graduate of the Ryerson Radio and Television Arts Program.
Yes, I am.
Which you, shortly after or during, is when you made your first film, Roots of Man.
Yes. In fact, immediately after I graduated, I realized, crap, I don't have access to all that gear anymore. So I got a gig with fly-by-night television station in Toronto and started borrowing their gear and used that to start shooting stuff.
Right. And that was your first official film, if you would?
I'd say, yeah. I mean, it got into film festivals and it made a profit, and it's continuing to this day to sell because it's like an Irish documentary. So, around the middle of March when St. Patrick's Day hits, I get a little bump in sales every year.
Well, congratulations on that. It's always nice to get a check that you're not really expecting.
Yeah.
And that film, Roots of a Man, went through Oscar qualifying festivals and was competing against films such as March of the Penguins.
Yes. And I mean, I'm not ashamed to say Morgan Freeman beat me. Yeah. That's fine.
That's fair. He's got a little bit of credit.
Yeah.
So this is a good start to what many people want for a start to a career. We're talking quick rise here from an outside eye.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on what you qualify as being a filmmaker, really. If it's making the films and people seeing them, which that's what I qualify as filmmaking, I mean, that's the dream right there.
You're doing it. You're living it.
That's it.
From there, eventually moved into Hollywood?
Yes. I made a $10,000 Western that was in an international bidding war. This gentleman was in it, and I gotta say that's probably why it was in a bidding war. I don't know.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
You and Colin Feore probably combined. And it had a beautiful score.
Yes,
and
it did.
It was a competently made film.
Yeah.
And it was a spaghetti western, really, like a modern, like a post-apocalyptic spaghetti western. And so that thing got in a crazy bidding war and made so much more money than it should have. And then that really got some interest from agents and production companies, and then I got wooed down to Hollywood and started working for the odd studio that wanted a pitch or a script, and one of the ones that I did was for NBC Universal's Sci-Fi Channel, and it's like a $40,000 writing gig, so they make a movie for a little over $1 million, and they pay you $40,000 of it, and you just watch all the money get burned. But they made a movie that they wanted to make, and they made it from a script that I really loved. So it was a weird feeling to go from being someone who would make a movie for $10,000 that turned into something I really was proud of, and then had other people make a movie with me. Like, I was on set, I directed second unit, but that doesn't mean much. So you wind up watching them make it into something else, really, because the main director made it into the movie he wanted, and then the editor made it into the movie she wanted, and by the time the movie was on the screen, there were so many people who were in charge of the authorship that it wasn't really my movie anymore.
Right. That makes sense. Now, you and I were chatting earlier, and I think what this statement sums up what you're saying is that you can work in Hollywood, you've been wooed by Hollywood, you've enjoyed Hollywood, but your indie sensibilities don't necessarily always mesh with Hollywood.
No, I mean, Hollywood's doing a weird thing right now where you've either got a $250 million blockbuster that needs to make money or the CEO is fired. Like Justice League. People were like chopping block.
Yeah.
Or you're making Moonlight and it's a few $1,000,000 or even less. You know, Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch, depending on the verticals you're going after, the audiences you're going after, you're able to make a film for much less money that makes a crazy profit relative to its cost. I feel like that is the polarization of that is just getting more and more extreme by the minute. And so it means my sensibilities where I like to craft a film every step of the way. I like to come up with the idea. I like to write the script. I like to direct the actors. I like to edit the film. I like to produce it so that all of the elements that I think need to be there are there. But it's a collaborative enterprise, so I want a bunch of voices to be giving me their opinions, making it better, making it into more than it could have been if I had done it completely by myself. If you want to be an artist by yourself, paint. Yeah. Film is not for you. But I like to strike a balance there where I have a large amount of creative authorship, but it's not like a narcissistic personal project about me.
Right. That's fair. That is very fair. And you and I have debated that before, discussed other people's opinions, and I've heard you called a narcissist before, but I argue in light of you, so many aspects of film get broken down. An editor's view is different than a writer's view, a director's view different than the editor's, and so on,
Yeah.
that if you want to tell the story that you truly want, you need to control all those points. And that doesn't make you narcissistic, it just makes you a man with a vision, and you know the story you want.
Yeah, and I mean, beyond the idea of controlling every point, just having a say in every point, I think is huge. You know, the directors that don't go into the edit suite don't get a say, even if they don't have a part in their contract that says they get final cut. Being in the edit suite means you get a say. Right. And you know, you can be overridden by a producer if that's what the contract allows, but at least you have a say, and your creative impetus winds up beyond the set. It's also in the edit suite.
Absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. The other thing that stands out amongst the many things in your career that I want to highlight is you are the creator of Highball TV. I want to correct myself there. Not only the creator, but you've created Highball TV in co-creation with Melissa D'Agostino, correct?
Yes, my partner, Melissa D'Agostino, who's my partner in everything from business to life to filmmaking. She and I built this because we realized that we have a knack for what happens after you make the movie, which is getting people to see it. So whether that's getting it into the right film festivals, getting it into the right distribution companies, getting it into the video stores that still exist, getting it onto television, getting it onto airlines, getting it in front of people who can watch it and can pay you for it. That's something that not every filmmaker has a green thumb for. So I realized that instead of doing it for my own movie every 2 to 3 years, I could help other filmmakers get their work in front of audiences that are willing to pay them. And that made a huge difference in a bunch of films' lives already. So yeah, that's something that is really important to me. So highballtv.com is a streaming service, but in addition to being a streaming service that's focused on film festival movies, it's also a distribution company. So depending on the movie that comes to us, we're able to help them get it on television, get it on airlines, get it on DVD, get it in theaters, get it eligible for awards that they want to win. Because, you know, being a filmmaker has a lot of different kinds of satisfaction. But a filmmaker who doesn't consider the financial elements is kind of forgetting that show business is a business.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And that's something that actors, artists in general need to recognize, right? That we are in a business, not just the show aspect of it. And you could just do the show aspect of it, but if you want to get out there, be seen, be recognized, and achieve higher acclaim, even higher monetary income, you've got to know the business.
Yeah, I mean, in Canada, like in some countries with federal endowments for arts, we're fortunate that we don't have to do show business if we don't want to. We can just, like at the NFB, that's just show,
Right.
and that's great. If you've got a provincial or a federal or even a municipal grant to make a movie, you can make something pretty great for the $20 to $50 to $100,000 you can get from those funds. Unfortunately, in Canada, a lot of them mean you're not allowed to partake in certain parts of show business. Like tax credits are a thing that allow a budget to increase because you're shooting them in a place where the local government is trying to encourage production. In Ontario, that works out to like 30%. So if you have $100,000, that becomes $130,000 if you shoot it in Ontario, unless you have grant money.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we've decided in this province, and certainly in most parts of this country, that if you have a grant, you're not doing business. And so you're not eligible for that.
Right.
Which, I think is a little bit BS. But I don't write the laws yet.
That's fair. That's fair. When you do, they'll change, right?
Yes.
So all that talk brings me around to something that I find very interesting. I've always known you as a filmmaker. I met you way back on 6 Reasons Why, Spaghetti Western. That started it all, so to speak, from my perspective. Roots of a Man before that.
Yeah.
And all of the Star Wars edits pre.
Yep. And there were many.
Right. So I've always known you as a filmmaker. Over the years that I've known you and our friendship has grown, I've started to see you as much more. You are an entrepreneur. And what separates that in my mind from filmmaker to entrepreneur is the fact that, unlike many, not all, but unlike many, you are in a minority of people who survive solely from the craft. And what I mean by that, I'm going to categorize that a little further. You survive with all of your forms of income, all your resources, they come from the industry somehow.
Yeah.
Unlike many others, myself, which makes a little bit more sense as an actor, I think, I go to my day job, and when I book a gig, I take time off. But I know many, I know many other filmmakers, directors, I know sound guys, you know them as well, who are like, yeah, let me see if I get my shift off this weekend to do X on this film project that you're asking me to participate in, right?
Yeah.
You don't do that. You set your own schedule.
Yeah.
You've got commitments, I'm sure, within that schedule, but that schedule is film all the time.
Yes. And, there are some filmmakers who do that by doing wedding videos and wedding films and things like that. They're technically making a production.
That's right.
It's a scenario where you're making a production for a client. So there's a customer, and the customer's always right. And so, ultimately, as long as you're making a film for a buyer, you have to keep that in mind.
Yes.
And so if it's one buyer, you have to keep one person's perspective in mind. If it's, 40,000 people you expect to come to buy a DVD or an online purchase or come to a theater, then it's a different kind of consideration. Right. But absolutely. Yeah, there's always a customer.
There is always a customer. And your customer base comes out of things that you primarily generate. And as I said, there's some semantic argument there for sure. But all in all, as an entrepreneur, you survive by being in the industry.
Yeah.
And that big huge whoo of a wind up to this comes to that question of, when did you start to make that transition, or when did you start to see that happening for yourself, and how?
I think I did go to film school. I did not go to anything called a film school. I went to Radio and Television Arts, which is an engineering school. So I learned to let my left brain and my right brain get along. And because of that, I think I started to recognize that every film undertaking is a startup. It's an entrepreneurial venture where you decide who the market is, you strive for product market fit, and then you create the product, the prototype, and then you bring it to market. So I think the mere fact that my engineering brain and my art brain get along so well meant that this was never really a transition into realizing that, as much as basically a, a trial and error where I was like, when I make a movie for this much money for this audience, and every time it's got to be a film I love making.
Yep.
But if I make a film for this much money for this audience, it results in this. If I make a movie for this much audience, it means I need these other partners that have this much power, and how do I feel about that? Am I making the film I want to make still? It was really just a trial and error of figuring out how big can I make a movie? How many stakeholders can there be in a film? What does my title need to be?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
ultimately, the only films I've made that I love are films where my title is also producer. I have made films that I directed but didn't write, but I produced, and I love them. I made films that I wrote and produced and didn't direct, and I love them. I've made films where I wrote it, directed it, edited it, but did not produce it, and another producer did, and then they got to do what they wanted with the film, and it was not what I wanted.
Right.
So I came to realize that the common denominator is I must be the producer. That's when I'm happy with the art, and that's when the art is also successful. Because when other producers are on board, they are making it in a different way, a way that maybe doesn't require an audience because they have a buyer. In the case of working with the Sci-Fi Channel, as long as the budget balanced and there was enough money coming in from buyers, then that particular film didn't have to have an audience. If it found an audience, then there was going to be sequels and so on and so forth, but there was never a concerted effort to make an audience or to go after a particular group of people. And that's an easy group of people. Sci-fi, westerns, people who like the movies of the week on Sci-Fi Channel. Like, you could go after that audience, but that was not the effort.
Right.
The effort was make the thing, go on to making the next thing.
Which has its own merits within itself, but may not, at least for yourself, and I know for myself in that same situation, is not creatively fulfilling.
Yeah, not what I was after, but it was after what the producers were after.
Yeah,
and they wanted to make more films and series with the Sci-Fi Channel, and they have. And that's awesome. They got what they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's got their own drive and their own purpose.
Absolutely.
What I'm hearing from you in this response is that, unlike, and I'm going to use myself here as the example, and from that extrapolate off of many others I've spoke to, that unlike myself who went, okay, I want to be an actor, I need to do this, how do I pay my rent until I get there? I went and found a day job, and I'd made good value out of that, and everything works for me, and I'm doing well. Yay for me, and many others out there on that same track. You, on the other hand, came out of school and went, that's not where I need to be, because I like doing this, and when these two things mesh, my left and right, then I can do what I want. And that producer brain, if you will, best way to qualify it, that producer brain is what led you into ventures such as Highball TV.
Yes. I mean, ultimately, if you are making films that you own, that's your library. You can do whatever you want with it. Werner Herzog, his early library belongs to him. And then he started making larger films for other production companies, and that belongs to the production company. But he makes more money now off of his library he owns than he will ever make off of one work for hire.
Right.
So for me, it comes down to make films that have audiences, own those films, and then bring those films to audiences who will pay for them. And that means right now, when I have, 5 titles that are generating money, that's great. And in 10 years, when I have 10 titles that are generating money, it will be making twice as much.
Yeah.
And so the more content you have that has an audience that you bring it to, because audiences are inundated with content, it's up to you to find them. They're not going to find you.
Right.
So if you can consistently build that audience for that content, you're able to make more money every time you make a new product. And that money continues. All of my films are on Highball TV or Amazon Prime or, less iTunes, because the transactional video on demand world of iTunes and Google Play is kind of bottomed out. That's why Apple switched over to this Apple TV Plus, because they weren't making money in iTunes anymore.
They're making their adjustments, right?
Exactly.
Dealing with the industry.
Exactly.
So you survive primarily from the production side, which funds you or gives you the means at your leisure to make film.
Yeah.
Following you?
Yeah.
Excellent. What's that like? And the reason I ask you what that is like is my world and so many other artists' world is a discussion of, wow, man, it sucks to do a day job. I hope I can get a booking soon. You don't have that statement.
No.
What's it like?
It's the best. I mean, I am so excited to wake up every morning and work on someone else's movie because they've brought it to Highball TV and I want to help them find an audience. Or work on their movie because they need a new poster that will get people's interest when it goes on its theatrical run that we're supporting. Or write my next feature film, or read a script that I wrote 3 years ago that I think now is the right time to make, or read someone else's script that they're coming to us because they would like Highball TV to help them develop. I love everything I do. Every day is exciting for me.
That's fortunate.
It's very fortunate. I've gotten to the place now where, because I now finally have like a studio office space on the other side of town, I finally gave myself weekends.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's nice.
Weekends, that's an interesting, wow, weekend. What's that mean?
Right? For the first 20 years of my career, I had no idea what a weekend was.
Yeah, who knows that, right? Very true. So, I guess one of the other questions that sits in my mind is, what does it take? You've got so much experience. You're helping others get their films off the ground. You get your own films off the ground. What does it take to get a film off the ground?
I think what it takes really is knowing what the ultimate goal for the film is, because really anybody can make a film. It's like 100,000 little steps you can do in 20 minutes, all strung together into a feature film. Sometimes it's figuring out why Sally wants to talk to Bob. Other times, so that you can write it into the script. Other times, it's figuring out how to get that irritating buzz out of the sound that you recorded. Other times, it's figuring out whether this poster or that poster, or this trailer or that trailer, is going to make an audience want to see it. And each one of those steps is somewhere between, hey, I got an idea, and standing ovation. Like, there's just a bunch of little micro steps. So I think the trick is knowing that this is not a sprint. This is a slog. This is a very long marathon. You're going to be working on this idea for 12 to 18 to 24 months. I mean, honestly, I've got feature films that I shot and wasn't happy with the music and shelved. And then I heard the music. I heard the musician that was perfect, and I pulled that film back out of storage, made a deal with that artist, and now that movie sings. It needed the right sound. And I'm not a musician. So the one thing I do not do is write the music for a movie, ever.
Note that, folks. See, we've highlighted everything else he does.
Can't do
not
that.
Music.
Yeah, can't do that. And, there are times where I'll edit a movie with pre-score from Ennio Morricone, or I'll edit a film with no music at all to see if it can stand on its own. But ultimately, I've never made a musicless movie. I always bring on a musician, a composer, a band, an artist, somebody who has the right vibe, feel, sound, or would like to compose something in the sort of vein of what I have in mind or what the pre-score is. And I really don't like giving pre-score to composers because it's like giving a line reading to an actor. It's not cool. So as much as possible, I try to see what a composer comes up with and is inspired by in a film that has no music. But yeah, sometimes I just have to put Ennio Morricone in there and say,
sometimes.
Do your best.
And otherwise, regardless of that approach, you're speaking about collaboration, which you spoke about earlier. You always bring in people. And here's an interesting thought or question, I guess. Success is defined by many things. And one of the things that you have relatively recently started doing is you've been called out to panels to talk on various panels.
Yeah.
Through Highball TV and through some of the other projects you've done, which for many denotes success, right? When you hit that point of, yes, I'm officially a speaker, I am successful, right? That feeling. So what's it like being in that position where young you is sitting in the audience, so to speak,
Yeah.
looking to you for advice. Like, you're that
Well,
person now.
I gotta say, when I was younger and watching people speak, I was always most interested in what bombastic, loudmouth disruptors had to say. And now that I'm a bombastic, loudmouth disruptor, I like to think that if there is a little me out there listening to the burn the mother down philosophy that I have on so many parts of not just the Canadian industry, but the film industry at large, I like to think that they're getting some encouragement that their crazy revolutionary ideas will one day take flight. I mean, I remember in 1999, I wanted to build Highball TV, and I wanted to build iTunes, the iTunes Music and Film Store, and neither of those things existed yet, and it was a crazy idea. And I spoke with the CEO of Alliance Atlantis.
Wow.
At like a what was it? Some kind of Better Business Bureau, like young members. My mom got me on something when I was like 17. Yeah. And so I said, "Hey, what are you going to do about interactive television and video that could just be like delivered on demand?" And Michael McMillan said to me, "Oh, that'll never happen."
Here we are.
And that company is no longer in existence.
Yes, that is correct. And
so, and I've had conversations with the CEO of TELUS about the products that they weren't offering and the ones that I thought were basically going to destroy them if they didn't offer them. And then within a year and a half, they were offering them. And I feel like, people who listen to disruptive voices will not be disrupted. They will help do the disruption.
Right.
And you never want to be disrupted. You want to be the disruptor. So listen to those voices, those younger people, even those older people who see things you don't. Collaboration, man. Whether you're running Alliance Atlantis or TELUS or Sci-Fi or GM or making a little feature film with your pals for $10,000. Listen to the disruptive voices. Consider all angles, because nothing stays the same. The only constant is change.
This is a very, very strong truth and reality. And spinning off of that, we've defined a level of success that many people would agree with. He's up in the panel, he's successful, right? What's your version of success? What do you qualify it as for yourself? Because you have reached a level where you can reflect back and deem something, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, to me, success is doing the thing I'm passionate about, and it pays me, and I can eat. Like
if I can eat, I'm successful.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the thing I'm doing that I love is paying me to do it, that's success.
Right.
And so, whether that is a movie on the Sci-Fi Channel or a movie I'm truly proud of because I made it from scratch, starts to become the minutia of how happy am I with this success? Is it the story I wanted to tell the way I wanted to tell it? And so I'm able to sort of dial in the exact kind of success that I'm after, because I've had a few different kinds of success that were more or less
successful.
Satisfactory.
Yeah.
Satisfactory.
Okay.
Success.
Yeah. So we've got success that sits up here for you, which is the baseline of, am I doing what I love and able to live off of?
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean critical acclaim or anything else. That just means that you're doing what you love and it's paying the bills.
Yeah, I mean, I've made movies that sit proudly at 2.5 stars on IMDb. But the neat thing about that is that's a bunch of people that give it a 0 and a bunch of people that give it a 10. And obviously more people give it a 0 than a 10, but I'm making it for the people who give it a 10.
Yeah.
I am not making movies to compete with Avatar and Endgame and Titanic. I don't make movies for everyone. I make movies for a very specific niche of people that I know are going to be interested in the film, that I know are going to come out to watch it and support it, and that's all the people I need to like it. Yeah. It doesn't matter to me if the film critic at the Globe and Mail or the New York Times likes it. What matters to me is if the 30,000 people I need to like it.
There's one other person in there that absolutely has to like it. You said it already, but I'm gonna make it very blatant. You have to like it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
And if I don't like it, no one else is going to, because I'm
Exactly.
making. I don't make things for other people. You know, you look at Robert Rodriguez,
Mhm.
and there's a guy who made like cool, violent, hyper real stories about people in Mexico because it was a part of his experience as an Austin Latino, and so he then had kids and started to make Spy Kids, and he again was making movies for himself. These were movies he wanted his kids to enjoy. Then he got his kids involved in making them, and Shark Boy and Lava Girl is something that he and his kids came up with together. So he's making films from his experience that he loves or that his loved ones will love. And to me, that's the truest way of making movies. Make stuff you love. There are other people like you. And as long as you know how to find them and speak to them and get them to watch the movie with you, then you've found your audience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's why George Lucas wanted to get into television. It's why George Lucas wanted to keep making Star Wars movies, because there's an audience for that. And once you sell them on the first one, if they like it, they'll stick around. Yeah. If you have to make the next Ron Howard movie, which oddly enough is sometimes a Star Wars movie, but the next Ron Howard movie that varies widely from Apollo 13 to Star Wars, I mean, at least they're both in space, but, you know, the next thing he makes, or the next thing Clint Eastwood makes, whether it's a musical or a Western, he's going after a different audience each time with a bit of Venn diagram overlap of people who will watch a Clint Eastwood movie. You'll watch J. Edgar because it's a Clint Eastwood movie. It's not a good one, but it's a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah, agreed, very much agreed. And I think that's the key that you've summed up here. We've got this list that we start with of the variety of things you've done that have put you in a position that now has you being called on to talk at panels, as well as you're running your own Highball TV, your company, which gives you the freedom to do things. But that all comes out of you followed the passion of what you love doing, and that's led to your success, whether it be yours as in what you've claimed, or whether it's somebody from the outside world saying Matt Campagna is successful.
Yep.
And I think that's a great lesson for any artist. I think that's really the meat of what this interview speaks to in this moment, is for artists out there, whether they be actors or writers or painters or filmmakers or producers. If you're an artist, do what you love doing. Make the stuff that you want to make, and in the end, have fun doing it and pay your bills. Don't rely on the day job. Find a way to branch out.
Yeah, there's an audience willing to pay for stuff. The ways in which they've paid have shifted drastically. If you look at everything from hardcover books that used to be $30 that are now $1.99 download to your Kindle, or a $40 vinyl that became a $20 CD that became a free play on your Sonos. Like, the way in which people are engaging with content is different. A lot of it is subscription based now, but that's an audience still paying. And I think the average is like you need 350,000 plays on Google Play to make money. Wow. It's a frigging load of plays to make anywhere near enough money to call yourself, a professional who's living off of it. But if you can find the 350,000 people, or better yet, the 35,000 people who will play your song 10 times, or the 3.5 thousand people who will play it 100 times, you will make that money.
Yeah, as long as you're passionate about it. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to put a plug in for Highball TV. If you don't already have it, or you haven't looked at that subscription service, do. It's a version of your Netflix in terms of it being a streaming service, but it specializes primarily in festival circuit style films, so content you're not going to find on your major players. Yeah. Check it out and see if it works for you. Subscribe to it if you like. If not, subscribe to Matt. I will, like always, post all of his links and ways to contact him, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff at the end of these credits. And with that said, that brings us to a wrap. Matt Campagna, thank you for joining me in the green room.
This is great, Jeff. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Likewise.
And we'll see you in just a few weeks.